Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. If you could drop your name in the chat and where you're from, that would be great. My name's Leah and I'm based in London.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil. I'm also in London. We'll be starting in about 30 seconds. Just giving everybody an opportunity to join.
And as I've explained in my email, the way that this wishing to work in the Employment Mental Health Act is beyond how I would normally use it.
We're just going to ask, if you are in a public environment or in an office where there is background noise, if you could just mute yourself. You'll have the opportunity to interact, so you can just unmute yourself if you've got something to share. It just prevents background noise and interference. And we'll be starting very shortly. We've still got quite a few people joining. We're very glad that you've joined us for this very special session for Mental Health Awareness Week. And looks like we've got people from all around the country. We usually have people dialing in from all around the world. So let's see if we've got anyone from further afield than Northern Scotland. So how many of you understand the importance of community and the role that it plays in better mental health? How many of you are confident that there is a strong link between community and our mental health and well-being? Looks like it's just me. Okay. Thank you. How many of you are at least interested in learning how community plays a role in encouraging and in creating a framework to provide better mental health? You are open to having those conversations. I'm hoping so, by the fact that there's like almost 100 of you here. Fantastic. And that's really the theme for this year's Mental Health Awareness Week, which we'll come to in a second. But how many of you do not understand and are not interested in the importance of community and the role it plays in mental health, and have accidentally joined this webinar completely different to what you thought it was going to be? Okay, great. We're all in the right place in that case. Well, you are all very welcome. I'm always absolutely blown away by the amount of people that attend these sessions, and we typically get anywhere between 300 and 1,000 people that join our monthly session. So we're very grateful for you giving up your time and your energy to be here. As I said, we typically get people from all around the world. It looks like we've just had Heather join us from the States. So at the moment, Heather, it looks like you're winning the prize for being the one furthest afield. So this session, we have a very short amount of time to discuss a very broad and diverse subject. So we're going to do the best to make the most of this time. This session is being recorded for those that aren't able to attend live. We typically get 3 to 5 times the amount of people that watch it as a recording than watch it live. But also, for any reason, if you miss parts of today or need to leave early, there will be a recording which will be shared tomorrow to allow you to be able to catch up. How many of you have ever attended one of our sessions before? Okay, couple of you, fantastic. Well, thank you for being here again. How many of you are here for the first time? I can see Carly's just put in a message. It's the first one. Fantastic. For those of you who are here for the first time, you're very, very welcome. We do this every month. This is kind of part of our commitment to essentially creating a happier, healthier, more resilient world and contributing content that's relevant and is talking to the issues that are affecting us all. And this is something that we do because we are, at its core, we are a movement. We're here to make a positive difference, and we are able to use this space and this platform as a way of being able to reach as many people as possible. We can only continue to run these programs and all of our non-commercial activities with the generous support of everybody that has and will in the future support us through their donations and supporting us in other ways. So if you are able to support us in any way, everything helps. You can just basically take a picture of that QR code, or we will send you a link later, should you be able to support us to continue to do this work. How do we run this session? Well, firstly, this isn't a webinar. I know it's kind of called the Mental Health Awareness Week public webinar, but it's not a webinar like you would normally attend. Because typically when you go to a webinar, you kind of sit there and you watch someone waffle on for an hour, go through their PowerPoint slides, give you some facts and figures, tell you what's what, and thank you very much, have a nice day. That's not what this session is about. As much as we probably will end up with 150, 200 people on this call, it is a workshop. It is an opportunity for us to connect and collaborate and have some open discussions, which you will be able to participate in. Really what we're here to do, and not just for this month, but every month and with all of our activities, is to build a sense of community. And in a community, it's where people show up for each other. We're able to talk. We don't have to agree. We can have discourse, debate, and discussions and better understand each other in order to be able to find a better way forward. So we are, in order to create a safe space, going to strongly encourage you to put your cameras on. So we're actually a group of humans having conversations with each other rather than looking at initials on a screen. That doesn't really create a safe space for us to have open discussions. So if you have the ability to do so, I strongly encourage you to put your cameras on. If you have questions, if there are things that you'd like to discuss, share, explore, feel free to jump in at any point. You can put your messages into the chat, or you can just unmute yourself. My colleague Leah, give us a wave if you want to introduce yourself. Leah, you there?
Hi, sorry, can you see me?
No, we can't.
Oh, I think I'm having problems with my camera. I'll fix that in a minute. But my name's Leah. I'm a Wellbeing Project Manager at Stress Management Society and International Wellbeing Insights, and I'll be co-piloting this webinar today. So it's lovely to meet you all, and it's nice to see that you all have come to attend from far and wide. And I hope you enjoy, and I hope it's valuable to you.
And if you have any sort of questions or comments that you put into the chat, Leah will do her best to bring as many of those comments into the discussion as well. So there will be lots of opportunity to participate. We want to hear your questions. We want you to share your experiences. We're happy for you to disagree with us so we can have some open conversations. If you need us to clarify anything, if you want us to slow down, whatever you need over the next hour, we are here to help and support you in any way that we can. Just a couple of ground rules just to ensure you get maximum value from this time. We have a really short amount of time, so we're really encouraging you to be present. We're encouraging open, honest, and respectful discussions. If someone shares something you don't like or agree with, that is okay. They're entitled to their perspective as you're entitled to yours. If you can, be fully present to this conversation. This isn't a watch party. It's not something to watch in the background, but it's hopefully something that you can actually participate in and get maximum value from. But that means you need to do your 50%. What you put in over the next hour will determine what you take out. If you can, limit any other distractions, turn technology off or silent so you can be fully present. Have an open mind to new ideas, new ways of doing things. If you are making any statements, we really strongly encourage you to use I statements. I feel, in my opinion, I believe, rather than speaking on behalf of others. And we are, as best as possible, creating a safe space for us to open up and have conversations where we can talk about our experiences and the challenges we faced. So we do ask for confidentiality. What I mean by that is if people share anything of a personal nature, we're really strongly encouraging you to keep that within the confines of this space. So it's basically Vegas rules. What happens in this session stays in this session. Only two caveats to that is anything that we share or offer, you have our full permission to share that with anyone that's willing to listen. And for safeguarding reasons, if anyone does mention anything that impacts your safety or the safety of others, that is the only time that the rules of confidentiality will be broken. Are we all happy to agree to the ground rules around this discussion? Yeah. If anyone has anything you'd like to change, add, remove, or amend, feel free to drop that into the chat, and Leah can reflect that back to the discussion. So it is Mental Health Awareness Week this week. And if I can get my slides to work. Just before we get to that, there is some resource material. So let's put together a purple paper, which is our tongue-in-cheek take on a white paper. It's just a little bit more fun and colourful, around community and the link to mental health, and how we can use community as an antidote to some of the challenges that we're facing in society. If you would like a copy of that, very simple, there's a link that is just about to be dropped into the chat. If you click on that link, it'll open up a web browser and you'll see an image on that web browser. If you click that, you'll be able to download that PDF to your desktop. So this is the additional resource material that will accompany today's session. So we strongly encourage you to download that, because there is more in that handbook than we have the ability to cover in our discussions. So this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. How many of you were aware this week is Mental Health Awareness Week? Few of you. Okay, great. So it's an opportunity for us to start to have open conversations about mental health. When it comes to difficult, challenging, or uncomfortable conversations, research suggests that the three most difficult things for people to discuss in Western society are sex, money, and our mental health. Why do you think that is? Why is it so difficult to discuss sex, money, and mental health? Why are those the three most challenging and uncomfortable conversations for people to discuss? So Paulina's saying that it's taboo. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely, Helen. Stigma, personal, yeah, sensitive. Now, yeah, absolutely. It can make you seem vulnerable. Cultural reasons. Yeah, this is interesting. The challenge is, as a society, we take action against the issues that we discuss, and we don't take action against the things that we don't, because you don't even know the scale of the issue unless you're willing to have a conversation about it, right? Most people are shocked when they learn the true extent of the issues we have around mental health. For those who've attended our sessions before, you'll probably have a sense of the scale of the problem that we're dealing with. Can anyone tell me what is the main cause of death for a man under the age of 50 in Western society? Absolutely, Helen. It's suicide. So the main cause of death for a man, not just in Britain, but across Western society, is suicide. Now, that's something that most people have heard of before. But the one that will shock you is, how many of you are aware of what is the main cause of death now for a 10 to 19-year-old in Western society? So we're talking about, youths, children, 10 to 19-year-olds. Yeah, absolutely. It's also suicide. So we have got to the point where one of the biggest reasons for young people to be, to get to the end of their lives, or the reasons for death is suicide. Yeah, we're still so uncomfortable even having a conversation about the subject. If we don't talk about the problem, how can we possibly find the solution? And that, for me, is where, awareness campaigns like Mental Health Awareness Week, or what we had last month, which is Stress Awareness Month, which is our campaign, is designed to create opportunities for us to have these conversations, is to get comfortable having uncomfortable conversations so we can then start taking action to make things better. Now, the theme for Mental Health Awareness Week 2025 is community. What does community mean to you, particularly in the context of mental health and well-being? So the actual question, not a rhetorical one. I've got a couple of hands up. Katie and Marta, I've got your hands up. I'm not sure if it was up previously, but seeing as you've got your hands up, I'd love to get your opinions. What do you think community means, particularly in the context of mental health? You may have inadvertently volunteered yourself.
I have inadvertently.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's just everyone. We don't have the same community, full stop, of anything that we used to have back in even 30 years ago. You used to have communities where you lived, local shops, local,
yeah,
like place play areas. I'm saying play areas like youth clubs and stuff like that. You used to have all that. Parents would speak to each other. If you lived next to your neighbours, you'd speak to your neighbours. Now, more often than not, most people don't really speak to the neighbours very much. I came from a sort of a cul-de-sac area where literally all the front doors were open. You could walk in, walk out. You know, we had babysitting clubs and it was all shared, and etc. etc. You don't have that now. Same cul-de-sac area. You know, maybe a couple of people on the cul-de-sac, and people just don't speak to each other. They don't care. And when people ask in the streets, or hi, how are you? It's very sort of a customary I don't actually really want to hear your answer. Whereas 20, 30 years ago, people would have waited to hear the answer and actually cared what the answer was. We don't do that anymore.
Thank you, Katie. No, you're absolutely right, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that a little bit further. But let's hear from Marta and Laura first. So, Marta, what's your take on this?
It's to have a support circle. Really, is it whatever that means to you. So yeah, it can be activities that you join. It can be family. It can be really anything. And well, I'm dialing from London, and this can be quite of a lonely place in that sense. So yeah, something quite important and very valuable these days.
Interesting point, Marta. That you know, you said that you're calling from London. It can be quite a lonely place. Some of you may be aware that London last year won an award. I'm not proud of this as a born and bred Londoner. I've lived my whole life in London. This was one award that I was actually really deeply to my core saddened that we won. London last year won the Loneliest City on the Planet award. For those of you who spent time in London recently, will not be surprised at that. However, what shocks me about that is there's 9 million of us living in London. You are never alone. Even from where I'm sat right now, there's probably 1,000 people in half a square mile of where I'm sat. How is it that we are so lonely when you are surrounded by people? Because there's a difference between being lonely and being alone. Does that make sense? Sometimes the loneliest place can be is a room crowded full of people, right? And I think, yeah, Hannah's just put that into the chat. You could be totally, well, you can feel lonely in a crowded room of people. You won't be alone. It's the difference between being alone and being lonely. What is the difference between the two? Laura and Carol, I can see your hands up and I am coming to you. But I think it's a point to address before we move on. What's the difference between lonely and alone? Anyone got any perspectives on that? Well, let me share from my perspective. Being lonely is there's a lack or missing a sense of meaningful connection with other human beings. Being alone is there is no one physically around. Does that make sense? But, and some of you already mentioned it, in this online connected world, the hybrid remote working world, we're spending less and less time actually in physical presence with other human beings. And that for me is a huge challenge. It's so bad in Britain, we actually have a government minister for loneliness. I kid you not. I encourage you to look this up for yourself. You'll be shocked if you Google it. That since 2018, Britain has actually had a government minister for loneliness. Now, part of this challenge is that we are rapidly, as Katie's saying, losing that sense of community. So, Laura, what was your thoughts? I know you had your hand up. What would you like to share? Laura Hawkins.
Actually, I didn't know I had my hand up. Sorry.
No worries. Fantastic.
But I mean, I do think like a lot of it is down to money as well. And going back to my childhood, you know, my mum didn't work and more women didn't work. So they were at home doing the things there. My mother used to organise things for holidays and where people would gather, you know, within the village, and that you meet people, have fun then. But that's not done now because women and men work. You know, and I think there's no time. That's all. Everything's so expensive that they've got to. Two people got to work. You know, both parents got to work to be able to afford the houses and live. You know, and that's a big cause of it, I think, as well.
It's an interesting one, Laura. I kind of I grew up in the 80s, showing my age now. Both my parents did work. I remember you get home from school and you basically go straight to the park, and you'd be out with your mates till dinner time, where your mum would come home from work and scream over the fence to come in for your dinner. There was a park keeper that generally kept an eye on people. He had a dog called Chip. I remember when I was about 9, I stole a cigarette from my granddad, and me and one of my best friends were caught by the park keeper in the park trying to smoke this cigarette. He literally grabbed us by the ear, gave us a clip round the ear, took us home. Things like that don't happen anymore because there was a sense of community where people looked out for each other. You could say, you know, that park keeper would probably go to prison now for laying his hands on a 9-year-old child.
Yeah.
But it was a community that was looking out for each other. And my parents were on the side of the park keeper, right? Because it was like he had his eyes out for people in his community. What I'm saying is, yeah, but I appreciate financial pressures will contribute, but it was a very different way of life. Statistically speaking, the 70s, 80s, and 90s were more dangerous than life is now, right? I'm talking according to the Office of National Statistics, in terms of children being subjected to abuse and etc. There was a higher prevalence of that in the 70s, 80s than there is now, right? So the world actually technically is a safer place today, yet most people don't let their children out of their sight, whereas we were falling out of trees and scraping our knees. I don't remember a time in my childhood where I didn't have scraped knees. What I'm saying here is we have kind of this breakdown of community, you know, over the last 40 years. And in that space of time, we've had a significant increase in issues around mental health and suicidality, right? These are not two isolated incidents. There's a correlation between the two. As we kind of have this breakdown in society, you are going to have more instances of issues around mental health. So I think that this is really something for us to consider. Leah, what have we got in the chat?
So we've got a mix of opinions. We've got someone that said we had less money back then, but there was more community. I don't think this is a contribution to loneliness. We made we made our own fun and amusement. Someone else said it's very judgmental to say people don't care about others. In my opinion, it's a mix of factors at play. Someone said, I'm always happy to help. It's the perception of those helping that has changed, as it is not a trusted action. It seems to be helpful, or it seems to be helpful or approachable to any. It doesn't seem to be helpful or approachable anymore. The working week was designed for one person working and one person at home. We are doing it all. So I think there's a lot of people highlighting the fact that, you know, work kind of takes over, and that's a big contributing factor.
And it's an interesting one. I just want to pick up on that point of saying that people don't care about others. Basically, what underpins that kind of statement? I'm not saying that people don't care about others. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. There was some research done by Harvard. They've been doing this kind of this study, I think, approximately every 5 years, and they've been doing it since the 60s. And I think in the 60s, when they asked people to be able to reference how many people in their lives can they trust fully and completely, and people that have got their backs fully. Don't quote me on the exact numbers, but they just kind of give you a sense of it, and you'll be able to find the exact data on this online very, very easily. And I think when they started the research, I think in the 60s, people generally said they've got about I think if I remember the number correctly, it was something like 3.7 people. So averaged out that you've got 3.7 people in your life that you can fully and completely trust, right? That have got your back. You know, if you've got an issue, they're there for you. And they've done that every sort of 5 years since. And the number has continued to go down. I think by the time they got to early 2000, the number was something like 1.3. I think the last time they did it was about 3 or 4 years ago. Can anyone tell me, just have a guess, where we are now? Let's just say 2021. If you surveyed the landscape of your life, how many people do you think, on average, people in Western society could fully and completely trust? They've totally got your back. 2?
Yeah.
So the number was something like 0.47. What does that suggest? There's a lot of people that were part of this study that have got no one that they can fully and completely trust.
Yeah.
But if something happens, you've got no one to turn to. And I wish that I could disagree with that research. I've been working in mental health for 22 years, and I can tell you there's a lot of people that feel totally lonely and isolated, which is why suicide figures are going up year on year in England, Scotland, and Wales, which is why we've seen, you know, these issues getting worse across the world. So it's not so much that I don't think that people don't care, but we are living increasingly isolated, individualistic existences. How many would agree with that? That we're spending more and more time doing things that are separating us from our true nature. We are social creatures, right? So that's not my assumption or my opinion. That's basically something that the data is now starting to show as well. Go for it, Stephen. Oh, cool. Yeah. Katie, you had your hand up as well. Was there something you wanted to share, or was that from previously?
Well, no, it was just to sort of say really about what you were saying about it's not about people don't care necessarily. I just think we're not as invested in other people like we were. So there was that greater sense of community. We were spending more time with other people. Like you said, we were out. I used to come home from school, play outside. Home time was when it was dark. Relatively, the world was a safer place then. I'll tell you why, because we didn't know about it. Now we have 24/7 news, we have social media, we have kids who have not Game Boys, what they call PS2s, Xboxes, whatever. They spend a lot of time on that. That in itself gives you an isolated outlook on life, and that becomes your priority. You don't want to mix with people because actually you'd rather be playing your game. These games are designed to be addictive. Therefore, you're not investing in people and human interactions, and we are humans at the end of the day, and we do need that interaction. Otherwise, you do become a lonely individual, and that's where we've got to. And so it's not that people don't care because they're mean and horrible. It's because they're just not invested in the communities anymore. So we don't have the community centres, we don't have the community networks. That's all gone, and as a result of that, suicide rates, etc., are up because people don't feel like they've got anybody to go and talk to, because you don't have that central hub anymore where you can just go and knock on someone's door and go, hi, I'm struggling today, or whatever. And it's not that we were having those open, frank conversations that time ago, because we weren't, but you would pick, if you were feeling a bit down, I'd see it on your face and say, are you okay today? And that possibly would have been enough, but there's less of that going on. We're also now not sitting in offices around about 5 or 6, 7 or 8 people anymore. We're more and more doing this, and you just don't have that time to have that personal interaction with someone.
In addition to that, the places that we would typically congregate are going out of fashion. Pubs are closing faster than you can say, pull me a pint. You know, people don't go to churches, mosques and temples anymore in the ways that they used to. So there was natural opportunities and establishments where humans would congregate over a pint or over a hymn or whatever else. You know, as a kid, I used to go to the youth club. There are no more youth clubs in the area that I live in. I've literally had many of my first experiences at a youth club where we had a place to go. And what I'm saying is human beings need that social interaction. And that's why community is crucial. And also what we now have is the data and research to underpin that. There's been research done on blue zones. How many of you have heard of blue zones before? Anyone heard the term blue zone? Mark and Helen, I can see your hands up. I'm coming to you in a sec. So if you're interested in blue zones, I really encourage you to either look up the research or check out the Netflix documentary on it. It's areas in the world where people typically live to more than 100 years of age. Not only do they live longer, but they have a happier, healthier quality of life and better vitality at later stages of their life. And they basically mapped out what are the core ingredients that basically will result in a blue zone. There's only 5 left in the world. I've literally come back from one just a couple of months ago. That's Nicoya in Costa Rica, in northern Costa Rica. There's Okinawa in Japan. There's one in Finland, Sardinia in Italy. I can't remember the rest. But essentially, of those 5 pillars, Greece. I can't remember the island, but there's a specific island in Greece as well. But one of the core of the 5 components that basic result in longevity and better quality of life was community. Quite literally, having a community will result in you living longer and being happier and having better health. It's Ikaria, that was it, in Greece. And this for me was fascinating because this doesn't cost anything. It doesn't come out of a blister pack. It just requires some time, effort, and energy. And yeah, absolutely, Jacqueline. There were other elements to it, but the community element was one that for me was crucial, which is why I'm so glad that the theme for Mental Health Awareness Week this year is community, because it's something that is very much dwindling. Citing another Netflix documentary recently that's kind of shown the damages to society, particularly to our youths, of kind of this separation from that sense of community, was adolescence. And if anyone hasn't seen that yet, it really gives you a sense of like how our children are being programmed with a false sense of reality and are really being detached from being able to connect and understand each other, because we're not gathering in the ways that we used to. Mark, go for it.
I was just going to say that the way that we tend to work at the moment is when you're not working in your local community as well. So I work about 15, 16 miles away. And that gap between those that you're working with puts, almost a stop on any socializing afterwards. And I think because of that, and looking at the people who work around me, all work in different directions. Once again, even in the workspace, if you're not working from home within the community, you're also losing out, because you're losing out on those friendships that would normally develop into more, like you said, going down the pub, doing other things. That doesn't happen anymore.
Absolutely. It's such a great point. But in addition to that, if you're not going to a physical workplace regularly, you miss the water cooler coffee machine moments. You miss those conversations around, how's your football team doing? How's the kids getting on? What did you watch on TV last night? How was your weekend? Actually having human interaction, getting to know each other beyond being units of production, beyond technical, functional, operational discussions. Because when you're on a team or Zoom call, you might have a token, how are you? And then it's straight down to business because you've got another call already booked into your diary straight afterwards. So we are missing the human interaction. And it's interesting that they even call them soft skills, which really underplays the importance of emotional intelligence, which seems to be dwindling. Most people don't really develop their emotional or social intelligence. And really, the ways that we live, work, and communicate are not naturally creating opportunities for us to develop our social skills. So I think this is something, Mark, you're absolutely right. The coffee in the morning with your colleague, or the after work pint, or going out for lunch together. These things actually are vital to create a happy, healthy, flourishing workplace, but also for us in terms of our individual well-being. Helen Nicholson, you had a point.
Sorry, I'll just take my mute off. Yeah, it's just kind of like linking in with that as well, and thinking about the sense of community, looking at kind of like our town centres and our cities. I think, again, since COVID, I think a lot of that has changed now. So a lot of people either say work locally or don't go into their town centres as much. And because of that, then a lot of the shops have closed down, what have been around for quite a while. A lot of people don't feel safe. I know that personally. I live in a lovely, I'm very fortunate, a really, really nice village, but I very rarely go into the city where the office is, because I don't feel safe to go in there anymore, because a lot of the shops have closed. Then obviously it attracts some other kind of people where you don't necessarily feel safe and stuff. So it's kind of like a lot of that community around the town centre, around nipping to the bank to have those conversations, and that a lot of that has kind of like gone. So it's, how do we kind of build that back in a way?
Absolutely, Helen, I totally agree with that. And up until maybe last year, a couple of years ago, I had a romantic notion that things would slowly start going back to how they were pre-COVID. I have now come to the full realization it's never going to happen. We've moved too far away from how things used to be. There was a rapid shift that happened pretty much overnight. I had never used Microsoft Teams till March 2020. And we've been around for 22 years. We used to run sessions like this by being in conference rooms, in hotels or at client sites. And myself and the team would spend a lot of our time traveling around the world. And since then, most of our travel stopped and most of our sessions are like this, where you are literally seeing what people want you to see, or in many cases, you're seeing initials on a screen. I don't know if you're even there, or who else is there, or what else is going on, because I'm not having a human interaction in the way that we would if we were actually physically together. Now, I appreciate there are benefits to this. It means that I can achieve a lot more and reach a lot more people without having to travel so much. It also means that we have the ability to get people together for really quick, focused conversations like we are for this hour. So I think really what we need to consider is, rather than trying to go back to the way things were, how do we create a new way forward? We've learned what doesn't work, because what's happened over the last 4 years hasn't really worked, that we are becoming rapidly disconnected from community. So yes, we now have kind of technological advancements. You know, it's still, for me, fascinating that 70% of the conversations I have on Microsoft Teams start with, can you hear me? Can you hear me? The mute button at the top. It's like, what? Like, have we not got over that yet? Like 5 years in, and we're still like figuring out how to unmute ourselves and block out background noise and things like that. And so it's this process of evolution where, for me right now, the conversation is, I think we've established that community is important for better health, right? Would you all agree with that statement, based on the half an hour we've been talking, that community isn't just the nice to do, it's crucial, it's important, right? It's vital for us to build healthy, flourishing societies. That's not everybody agrees. It's not that we're all on the same page. It's not that we all see things the same way. I actually think a healthy community is where people do disagree and do have different opinions and do have different political persuasions and pray to different gods and eat different food. That's what makes a healthy, successful community. And I can say from first-hand experience, being a Londoner, that's what's great about London. It doesn't matter who you are, what you believe, what you're into, what your orientation is. We all kind of just get on. So it's not that we have to agree, but if community is important for better health, what barriers are preventing us from creating authentic connection within a community? Heather, I think you've got your hand up. I think it looks like an AI version of Heather. I'm not sure if that's correct.
I think Andrew was before me. Andrew, do you want to go?
Thank you. Yes, it is very much a case of we need to make the decision to do that. I mean, I've been working from home for the last 15 years. I've been an advocate of it. I'm a VDI specialist. As far as I'm concerned, you can stay where you are, work happily, but I make sure I get out into the community. I'm on the parish council. I'm a cub leader, so I get out there and I make my community by doing so, and I feel connected to it because of that. I mean, I also live in a beautiful little village, which really helps because everybody knows everybody, you know, and you know exactly the person that you're going to speak to if you want the rest of the community to know something, and it will get passed around. And that's how I grew up, which is why I moved to the village I moved to. But I did make an intentional step to get out there and do things.
And yeah, you're right, Andrew. It's a lot easier to hide away in modern society and just do your own thing and sit there watching Netflix and doom scrolling on Instagram and not having to get out and be in your community, have your food delivered to your house, get everything you need like delivered to your doorstep, and you could lead quite an isolated existence. And when you're busy, sometimes that feels like an easier option. We went to Devon, a little village just outside Dartmoor for Easter, myself and my partner. I had 4 days there. And you walk down the street and literally everyone would stop and say, hey, how are you? You're here for a holiday? What are you up to? Where are you from? And they'd literally be interested and have the time and capacity to explore your whole life story. Whereas in London, I'd be lucky if my next door neighbours say hello to me. And I think sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's been, I think, a breakdown in the community. London has been like that for a very long time. That there's been an isolation of communities. There's been a definite step back. There's lots of reasons for that, but there are people out there that are still trying to connect those communities.
Absolutely. And this is one of the barriers, is the more people you get, the harder it is. I think the magic number, there were some anthropologists that looked at this, the magic number for a community is about 100, 150 people. If you look at chimp communities, they generally don't tend to be more than groups of 100, because that way you can actually know people in your community. Does that make sense? When you get beyond that, it becomes harder, because we just literally do not have the capacity to retain social cohesion beyond larger groups. So that's where towns, small villages tend to do better, because they have the capacity and the ability to do that. They tend to be designed the same way that we are, to be able to operate in small functional units. When I say small, up to sort of around 100 people. But that doesn't mean, exactly as Andrew said, that if you are a bit more intentional, how you could start curating opportunities to build that support network around you. And it's, how then, if you've got those micro sort of communities, how that can filter into kind of broader social cohesion across your neighborhoods. Heather, I think you were about to share something as well.
Yeah, it's for me, it's more of a concern. And if I'm completely honest, I was very close to leaving the call. I'm coming at this from a neurodivergent perspective, someone who is autistic. So everything that I'm hearing in the conversations today is very neurotypical. And I don't know if you're aware of these statistics, but within the autistic community, it's up to 50% of that community will experience depression at least once in their lifetime. It's a huge percentage, but for autistics, it's the social interaction is a stressor. Mm-hmm. Rather than helping. It's more difficult, more challenging. A lot of the depression and anxiety comes from these social interactions.
Thank you for sharing. And we're not in here in any way, shape, or form telling people what they should or shouldn't do. Our role here is to facilitate a conversation so we can learn and grow together. So I appreciate you sharing your perspective, and absolutely, it's not that we're saying that you must do this and you must do that. What we are here to do is to highlight the concerns that we are experiencing across society and the consequences of some of these issues. But I also appreciate everybody has their own needs. And firstly, in terms of today's call, Heather, what can we do to support you to make it easier for you to be able to interact on this call?
Well, my use of an avatar rather than video is one. that is a big one.
I've never actually seen an avatar on a call before. It took me a little bit by surprise, because I was wondering what that was. Yeah, great. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so that's absolutely fine.
It's an avatar, which is quite helpful for people with autism. But I did also want to highlight that things like team calls and working more virtually and having the opportunity to work remotely yet still interact with the work community virtually is a huge bonus. And has led to a lot greater success for people within the neurodivergent community.
And absolutely, again, I'm not saying that working from home, remote working is good or bad, but what we're saying here is a lot of these things were introduced in without the kind of the real understanding or the foresight into how to make this work in a way that brings benefit. And I think part of this is what we've seen is a lot of knee-jerk reactions without really understanding the full consequences of these kind of actions, which is like, for example, young people in the workplace are losing a lot of the opportunity to grow and develop, because how much do we learn by way of osmosis, by learning and observing the behaviors of the things that are happening around us, the kind of disconnection with culture. So what I'm saying is that it's not black or white one way or another, but how do we make it work for everybody? Because everybody does have different needs. But as human beings, we do have a core need of social interaction. It's kind of literally genetically inbuilt within us. So this is part of the reasons we need to figure out ways that we can make it more accessible for everyone, regardless of kind of their individual needs.
I think flexibility is key.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I would agree with that. Some of the barriers are that, yes, it requires time and effort, but what are the barriers that exist that are preventing us from building that sense of community based on the things that we've discussed so far? What is holding us back? Why are we not doing this?
Someone in the chat said social media.
Okay. In what sense? Whoever said that, would you like to clarify? Because social media could be part of the solution, it could be part of the problem. I'd be interested to hear your perspective on that.
Well, I think it kind of yes, it's making it more individualistic. We just keep, especially it made me think when you spoke about the suicide rate in teenagers. I think yeah, it's just literally just people just checking out their phones. No, we see it on the trains, on the shops, walking everywhere. So yes, you're right. It can be such part of the solution, but I'm not really sure. I think it does more damage than other thing. But yeah, in that sense, really.
Excellent, thank you. I see Sylvester and Amy have got your hands up. So Sylvester, what would you like to share?
Yeah, I think, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, right, sure. I think it has a bit more to do as well with cultural diversity. For instance, when there are, say, workshops, one might expect, okay, so let me just go in, mingle, you know, but not everyone is perhaps quite comfortable with that, you know, and when most members or perhaps participants don't respond in ways that others expect, it kind of, you know, creates some form of divide in a way, you know, and that's where the different expectations, you know, come to play. So one might just keep quiet, keep to oneself, but that also can create some form of silence, which of course most people don't prefer silence, and yeah, it creates some sort of divide. And well, like I said, the cultural perspective, you know, the diversity coming in there, you know, goes a long way. I do appreciate one has to do well to find the best way to, you know, to engage, to find some common topics, the weather, you know, football and all of that. They all go a long way. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's not everyone who, you know, perhaps maybe that day you just feel like just getting, you know, straight to business, reading more about, you know, what brought you to the workshop, and then just, you know, contributing as much as you can, staying, but you know, you never know. And just an instance can give off some perception about you, which of course might not necessarily be who you were, but in the end, one might walk away thinking you are who they have perceived you to be, which is, you know, something that isn't great, you know, yeah.
Absolutely, and Sylvester, I love that. And you know, some of the things that we can do to overcome those barriers is those small gestures, actually showing someone you care. You know, as you said, whether it's talking about football or the weather or what's been going on in your life or what did you watch on television last night, getting people comfortable talking, because then when you get to something a little bit more meaningful, like how are you really doing, you're more likely to open up with someone you feel safe and comfortable with. But if we don't even have the time for the basics of just general conversation, how can anyone possibly ever feel safe enough to be able to say, well, you know what, I'm struggling a little bit, or have you got time for a chat and a cup of tea? So many of you may have heard the term microaggression. Well, we've got a slightly more positive term, micro-connection. Doesn't need to be, you know, big, heavy conversations all the time, but just reaching out every so often and showing people that you care, that you are interested. They call this moment the present because it's literally a gift. I know that's cheesy as hell, but you get what I'm saying. Is like, you know, giving someone your time and your presence is probably the most precious thing that you can give them. And you know, I think there was some research done with people that are end of life. They're not sitting there wishing they'd worked harder or made more money or, you know, achieved more milestones in their life. They're wishing they had more time, particularly time with the people they care about and the people that they love. So how can you make time now for people around you? And if you don't have people in your life right now that you think, I've got a strong connection or people that I love, how could you start contributing your time that builds those meaningful connections? Also leading with curiosity instead of assumptions, rather than just assuming that everybody's fine just because you ask someone, how are you? And they said, I'm fine, thank you, because that's what everybody says, right? That's not told you anything about them, but actually show compassionate curiosity, making compassionate inquiries of people. Asking better questions. You ask a bad question, you're going to get a bad response. Andrew, you've got your hand up. I am going to get to your point, but just before I do that, I'd just like to do a quick experiment with you. Andrew, I don't want you to think about this question. It's just the first number that comes into your head. Andrew, how are you doing on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm a 7. I'm working on it. Okay, good stuff. Yeah.
I'm not Darren Brown. I'm not a magician or a mentalist. How did I know he was going to say a 7?
It's what most people work on, isn't it? I'm not brilliant.
You told me nothing. You gave me a nothing number. 7 is the numerical equivalent of I'm fine, thank you. Yeah. I'm good. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
I asked a bad question, which is why I got a nonsense response. Andrew, how are you doing on a scale of 13 to 46?
Oh, that's an interesting one, that one. 33.
33. So how do I know I asked a good question? Firstly, we saw Andrew stop. He looked up. He literally looked for the answer. He reflected and he gave me an authentic response because there was no default response. It's quite literally the definition of asking a good question. A question that stops people in their tracks, makes them think. And this, for me, is where we can actually show people, I do care. I do want to know. I'm not just asking you a question to tick a social box, but I'm interested in how you're doing. Andrew, you had a point you wanted to share.
Yeah, it was just one of what you said earlier. I mean, one of my fellow councillors, he lives in the village, and one of his neighbours, his wife died recently, and he was expressing how he was feeling quite lonely about this, and how that he really didn't see a point in carrying on. And Mark is now making the point of going round and saying, can I come in for a cup of tea? Just so he's got someone to talk to. And it's to get him to come out, walk around, get out of the house, not be stuck in the house staring at that empty chair. And it's to show him there is community out there. There are people who care about him.
Absolutely. And I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with that. If you make a little bit of effort, you'll be surprised at how easy it is to be able to get people together in community. And we have actually seen this in London. We typically see this either when something good happens, like the Olympics or London Marathon Day, where everybody comes out in a sense of community and people are out celebrating together, or when something tragic happens. And we saw this during COVID. I grew up in London in the 80s and the 90s when there were IRA bombs going off.
Yeah.
And when that happened, people came together. When we had the riots in London, people came out of their houses and were sweeping the streets together, because that's the time where typically you see the best of a community, when something great happens or when something challenging happens. But why can we not bring that sense into our everyday existence? And this is really the sort of the question I leave you with, but also a tool. And the tool is, this is time to act. If you want to create community, it's up to us to act. And what does ACT mean? ACT is an acronym. It's a framework that we developed called Authenticity, Connection, and Topic. Be yourselves, be real. This is not like social media where you put up a picture of yourself on Instagram, which is absolutely not what your life is like. It's the picture you want to show the rest of the world. How about we show up in truth and authenticity to people around us, our neighbors, our friends, our family, people that we work with? How about we make moments of that connection? And as Sylvester said, those topics don't need to be big, deep conversations. Tell me about kind of your mental health, tell me about your relationship issues and what's going on. What it could literally be starting with, oh, you're an Arsenal fan, sorry, or whatever. Okay, maybe not start with that. If you're an Arsenal fan, sorry. I'm a Man United fan. It's even worse for me. But you know, football, the weather, You know, what's happening in the world around us. Maybe stay away from politics and religion. They tend to be quite polarizing subjects, but things that are easy and accessible for people, to get them talking, to be able to build that connection. Carly, this time next week, we'll see. Right? One of us is going to be laughing and one's going to be crying. I wish you luck. And I can see, like, yeah, it's all coming out now. At least, of course, you're a Man United fan. You live in London, Cockney Reds. What can I say? So yeah, it's being able to be yourself and to show the world, not a social media, Instagram sanitized version of yourself, but for us to be real. To make time for those micro connections, as Andrew said, get out in your community. You know, pop round for a neighbour for a cup of tea. You volunteer in one of our local parks. They've got the kind of volunteer group where people are just getting out and weeding and tending to the park. Our park is absolutely beautiful. Can somebody remove Valerie from the call, please? Yeah, we don't allow Liverpool fans onto our call. Community for everyone other than Liverpool fans. See how quickly, number one, as much as we're laughing and having a bit of banter here, do you see what sport does? Forget the fact whether you like or hate football. It's the fact that we can have opinion, we can have a laugh and joke, we can disagree, but it gives us a shared subject. Does that make sense? And this, for me, is that there are many other subjects, like weather is another great one, particularly, you know, for those of you in Britain, as many of you are. It's something we love talking about. It gives us a common starting point. But those conversations about football and weather, where can they lead to? If anyone's, we were working on a suicide awareness training for one of our clients earlier today. We're going to be including the Norwich Union World Mental Health Day, sorry, Norwich Football Club's World Mental Health Day video. If you haven't seen it, Leah, if you got the link from our meeting this morning, if you drop it into the chat, watch it at your leisure. But it will show you that the power that sport has to be able to highlight and raise awareness of important issues. Norwich is the blue zone. I'm not sure about that. It's not one that I'm aware of. But again, do you see, like, we can start our conversation with simple subjects, but then that can create opportunities for us to have deeper, more meaningful discussions. And Joe, absolutely, that's what this is, something that we're going to be using in our suicide awareness training as well. So this simple framework, just following the ACT approach, gives you kind of the opportunity to build those connections and that sense of community, whether that be in your workplace or your local neighborhood. So in terms of sort of taking action, you know, what can you do to develop that deeper sense of connection to create a healthier community? How many of you want to be the change that creates a healthy conversation around mental health? And how many of you want to, as Andrew said, be a little bit more intentional about your actions? Because this, for me, is where we get to decide. This short amount of time we had together is not about giving the answers or telling you what you should and shouldn't do. It's to plant some seeds. It's up to you, for us as a collective, to nurture those seeds, so we can start taking the benefits of these kind of conversations into all of our human interactions, in our workplaces, in our neighborhoods, and in our families. And that's really where, you know, every month we will be here without fail to be able to inspire you to have these conversations. There is lots more resources on our website. You can check them out on www.stress.org.uk. Leah will put that link into the chat as well. And you'll find lots of really wonderful and useful information there. If any of you are in a HR, health and safety, or workplace well-being background in your businesses, we have an exclusive forum for people that are key stakeholders for workplace well-being. You are welcome to join. I can see a few of our members here in the call today, so you are you're welcome if you are a decision maker around well-being to join. In addition, we get our monthly newsletter. Many of you would have found out about this this session from our newsletter. If you haven't done so, if you were forwarded the link to this, you can sign up on our website to receive our newsletter so that you're kept up to date with all of our developments and all the information that we share. If you are interested in learning more about safeguarding, signposting, support, how to create that sense of community, and how to be a champion and ambassador for mental health, We have our lowest price ever for our mental health champions program. That's coming up in June. We will put that information on the email that comes out tomorrow. But as I said, there is a very significant discount for anyone that is interested. And we've also got our online learning package as well, which will come out in the newsletter. If you found today's session, please give us a little review on Google. As I said, we do this because we care. We don't get paid for this. We only do this because of the support that we get and the feedback that you provide. If you need any other help, support or assistance, you can drop us an email at info@stress.org.uk. Leah will put that link into the chat as well, so the email into the chat. If any of you are struggling, you can reach out to Samaritans, mine, Calm, which is the campaign against living miserably. We have next month's session, which is Wellbeing in Full Bloom to celebrate summer. So that will be on the 18th of June. We have got to the end of the time that we've got allocated. We will be hanging out for the next few minutes if anyone's got any questions, comments, or anything they'd like to share. So feel free to stay on if you'd like to continue the discussion for the next few minutes. Katie, I know you had your hand patiently up. I needed to finish the content before people that needed to leave at 2 o'clock have left. But yeah, happy to hear what you would like to share, Katie.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, no, it's fine.
It's all, we've still got more than 100 people here. So
no, it's fine. Honestly, it was just to carry on about the why we don't do certain things or why we're so afraid of things, and it was just about the news. But I think you or someone else covered that. I think it is over coverage of news, so I think that was it. It's fine.
And it's interesting, Katie, because we do have a choice, right? I made a conscious decision about 10 years ago to stop reading newspapers and stop watching the news. And people are like, oh my God, but how will you ever know about what's going on in the world? Well, the world's different today. I have social media. I've got WhatsApp. I'm in groups where if something happens, even in my blokes football groups or in my family groups, someone will tell me if something has happened that I need to know about, right?
I think I think COVID was a major thing for a lot of people because it was just all so miserable and everybody was finding it really difficult. And at one point, I just had to say, I can't listen to this anymore. If we're locked down again, we're just going to be locked down again. I'll find out off whoever. I don't need to watch it on the news and be thoroughly depressed for 3 days because that's all we're going to hear. But all we're hearing about is miserable things. We don't hear about good things anymore. There used to always be a little section on the news of good news. You know, like Jimmy Bob down the road has just done some great thing with his football or something. There was always something like that. Now it's, you know, war's here, Trump's doing whatever he's doing, or, you know, COVID, something awful's happening, and it's every day, and it's news channel 24/7, whereas it used to be set times of the day. And I think that's probably not helped. But, you know, if we all went outside and played after work for an hour or so in the sunshine and went home when it was dark, we'd be much happier.
It's also interesting the fact that I think now we've arrived at a point where most people don't trust the news anymore because they have lied to us, and it's been proven that they've lied to us. So we have lost faith and trust in the news institutions where when I was growing up, if it was on the BBC, it was true, right? If you heard it on the news, it was true. Now I think we kind of got to the point where most of us recognize that that's not the case. So when you've lost faith, why would you still continue to consume information that's giving you a very skewed perspective on reality? Because I genuinely do not believe the world is filled with doom, death, disease, war, and destruction. I think there is as much beauty and wonder and examples of incredible things happening around the world as there are bad things. We just have an imbalance of information that's offered to us. So that's where, like, be careful about what information you're absorbing and you're exposing yourself to. Go for it, Sylvester.
Yeah, just to say thank you so much for this session held. Many a times we do overlook some of the relevance of some of such sessions. We get so focused on output, trying to deliver, trying to prove our worth, trying to do all the things that helps us feel that we are being acknowledged. In the end, it's like, quote unquote, for lack of a better phrase, we end up killing ourselves for our job, you know. But you see, I'm trying to chip in family here, and I'm being very careful how I present my case, because in the end, we have 24 hours in a day, and if you're spending about 8 hours of that, which means we're spending one third of our lives at the workplace, we are better off building a healthy relationship at the workplace, because it is actually contributing to our welfare as human beings. So the earlier we embrace that, the better. But how do we get the best out of it? If you don't engage, and think of it as this way: if no one engages, who would engage? And if you don't do it for others, who do you expect to also do it for you? We're a community, we live together. So in as much as it might not be comfortable, I think we ought to make it a conscious effort to try and put in the effort to try and then reach out, engage. And in that way, if all of us are engaging, we'll be able to look after each other, look out for each other, and then get the best from the workplace. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sylvester, I totally agree with you. The workplace community is one for me that is crucial for an individual's health and well-being, because it's the one place that, as you said, you're spending a bulk of your waking time. The session we had yesterday in our People Culture Wellbeing Forum was very much about that, is the importance of the workplace well-being. One of the clients that was there has 1.5 million staff. So around the world, big company, you'll know them, next day delivery, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to name drop them, but they are the biggest one in the world. But the point I'm making is, like, even for them with 1.5 million staff, which is, as big as many small cities around the UK, they've understood the importance of culture and being able to foster that kind of workplace sense of inclusivity. So I absolutely agree. But it's not for someone else or a board director or a senior leader to make that decision. We all have the opportunity to contribute. So yeah, I think that's a really good point, Sylvester. I appreciate you sharing that. Valerie, go for it. Oh, you're on mute, Valerie. And we've got Jen next as well.
Right, sorry about that. I
That's all
just
right.
wanted to say that this has been really helpful, because things have changed for me from going in the office twice a week to not being able to go in at all because of health reasons. But the loneliness has set in because I live alone with the four walls. So that plays a big part now, and there's not a lot we can do because I can't go into the office until my medical investigation's finished. But I've been listening to you and trying to interact. But once you spoke about football, I'm telling you, I just came totally up, alive. And that is what I did when I was in the office as well. Talk to people, and then on a Monday have a conversation. Not only did I used to be able to network with people who support football, but we were able to teach each other what new processes were coming in the office. And sometimes I think football is one of the biggest icebreakers that you could ever have with people. And it does for me. I mean, I was feeling really down this morning, once again, four walls. But this session, I've learned a lot of what I can do now and what I can read up on to sort of like make this easier for me, if you understand. And I want to thank you for that. And
you're most welcome. Thank you for sharing.
You're quite welcome to join Liverpool at any time.
No, that's not going to happen, but I appreciate the offer. And I think here's the thing: when it comes to football, we can have a laugh and a joke, we can have some banter, but it gives us some shared ground, right, to start the conversation. Through that, we're building human connection, we're building rapport and trust, and like, unless you've got some kind of diehard Man City fans, which don't actually exist because they're a figment of most people's imagination, that most people can have a bit of banter about football, and it's just a bit of banter. Do you know what I mean? But how can that then be built to, I've got to know Valerie. Yes, we started talking about something we have a shared interest in, but then we can then actually through that develop the ability to have more meaningful conversations. But it could equally be like, if it was teenagers, it could be about whatever video games they're playing, or it could be about music or food. There are things that we can use as accessible topics that allow us to build that sense of rapport and chemistry that will then provide a gateway to a more meaningful conversation. So absolutely, Valerie, I'm totally on that page with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm hoping that you don't surpass 20. Moving on to Jen.
It was only really to build on what other people are saying. I love the football banter. Do. As a completely, Neil knows, I'm a completely neutral lover of the bloody game. Whichever team, which normally supporting the northern team if it's a north-south thing, but always for the underdog. But my boyfriend supports United. My family split between Liverpool and Everton, so I can never win. So I just love the game. It was more really as I've been sort of listening and sort of keeping an eye on the chat. today, probably more so than the last one like this that I came on, to be honest with you, yesterday, there's been a bit more sort of like negativity in the chat, and I'm you know, I'm here for that, and I like the balance that we're not all sort of seeing everything through rose tinted lenses. But for me, I live alone like you, Valerie, but I'm able to, at the moment, I've had surgery, so I'm not allowed to get in the car. I can't drive. I can't go out and do. I'm a corporate trainer, so I travel all around the UK, normally everywhere, zipping about. But this recovery has forced me to stay indoors. But generally speaking, I have family and friends living all over the country, and it's about my intent, and I'm purposeful, and my mindset, and through years and years of sort of reprogramming my brain, I've become much better able to reframe things. And when we went into lockdown, I was recently separated from my then husband, living on my own as an adult for the first time. And all of a sudden, I'm told I can have no contact with the people that were sort of getting me through this really sticky period. But a very wise man said to me, and there's not many of those, Neil, as we know, but a very wise gentleman said to me, what else does this mean? And that's now a piece of advice that I share with whoever wants to listen. It might seem, oh, but what else does it mean? It means that you're keeping yourself healthy, Valerie, doesn't it? It means that you're not putting yourself at unnecessary risk. It means that you're able to recover and you know, re-establish the physical health as well as protecting your mental health in amongst it. It's so bloody complex, isn't it? And it's so difficult to navigate it, and it's so multifaceted. But for me, that I choose how my brain is set at the beginning of every day, at the beginning of every task. When I sat and made my lunch today, I probably could have scoffed it really quickly before we came on the call, but I kind of grazed because I felt like it was a little bit more social to sit and eat my cheese and gherkins with you guys, hoping that no one was watching me dripping gherkins on my cactus green mental health top today. But setting my intention, being meaningful, using social media to my advantage. I watch the news every morning. It's the first thing that enters my eyes in the morning, other than a cup of coffee, Neil. So choosing to connect with people online, in person, however I can. My neighbours, my downstairs neighbour is a solicitor in my village, and they took a parcel in from bloody Amazon earlier on for me because they never deliver here. And she didn't even know it was Mental Health Awareness Week and didn't know it was Wear Green Day. We got chatting. The next thing, there's a LinkedIn post of Caroline downstairs drinking a brew from a green cup. So we can make all these little differences, whether we are confined to our home temporarily or long term. But we have to be intentional and reaching out, Valerie, you know, around football. We talked yesterday about communities, and I love crochet, I love football. If someone doesn't like football, that's all right. Find out what sport they do like. You know, we can create all these conversations about our differences as well as our commonalities, but we have to do it with meaning and with heart, don't we?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. I love the fact that we're 11 minutes post the end of the call. We've still got about 50 people here. So it's clearly been a good conversation. Katie, I know you also had patient your hand up. We'll take a last share from you. And obviously, if anyone's got anything else that you'd like to ask or discuss, I'll hang out for the next few minutes. But we do have another call very shortly. But Katie, go for it.
It was just really quick. And actually, I'm well on Jen's page there. I think that's absolutely awesome. Just on the mindset thing, I think, I mean, I'm probably one of many. I've had therapy in my time, and during my therapy sessions, I was taught about mindset, intent, tools of how I can make my own choices to make my life a little bit happier. And I'll be an absolute advocate of this till the day I die. I think everybody needs these tools to be shown to them at a very young age of how they can actually shift their own mindset and make things a little bit more positive, because we are all very negative. We are all very much of the society at the moment where we listen to all the negatives of everybody. We feel everybody's entitled to our opinion, and if they don't like it, we take offence. And nobody, apart from football, this doesn't happen in football. Anyone can have an opinion on football. It doesn't matter what team you support. Everyone gets on board and they're all jovial, and it is banter. It is classed as banter. However, there are a lot of subjects that everyone talks about. It's like you get into politics, someone disagrees with you, and all of a sudden you've fallen out and you don't want to speak again. And there's a lot of that goes on in society. So yeah, maybe we can have a little bit more of the football conversations, a little bit more, like Jen said, about the positivity and framing our own minds. And if someone has a different opinion, that's fine. Let's just be a bit more open-minded about it and be happy like that. And so anyway, there you go, closing point.
Absolutely, I totally agree, and I think it's actually healthy for us to have differences of opinions and to disagree, because that's how we learn and grow. For me, idea of hell would be a sanitized society where everybody thinks and acts the same. That would be awful. So actually, it's healthy. Even though there are things on this call that have deeply disturbed me, like the anti-Man United rhetoric. And also the fact that I've been informed that there are very few wise men in the world. So that's kind of completely dashed my hopes. But on that bombshell, I think it is important that we're able to view things as they are rather than as we're told they are, to be able to get out there and talk to people and get to know each other. Because I think you have less xenophobia, you have less societal issues like racism and homophobia and things like that when you actually know people in your neighborhood and you see them as people. You don't see them by how they're defined or the labels that they've attached to themselves, if that makes sense, because we are all one community. And I think that this is where it's not for someone else to fix it. We don't need a government minister for community, because that would just lead to more issues rather than actually resolving issues. It needs every single one of us to step up to create the world and the communities that we want to be a part of. How will you be a champion and an ambassador for positive change? So I leave you on that note. Thank you all so much for being here. Look forward to seeing you next month. In the meantime, if there's anything we can do to help or support, feel free to reach out. You will get an email from us with all the information that we shared in today's call, as well as much more. And yeah, wishing you the best in being a champion and an ambassador for positive and healthy community. Much love, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.